All right, hello, and welcome to another interview with a Zine Quest 3 creator. Today I have with me co-creator of Repugnant, John DeCampos. John, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey man, how's it going?
I'm doing good, doing good. So
Good.
you are the co-creator for Repugnant.
Yeah,
Who else is on this project with you?
it's me and Tony Vacinda from Plus One EXP. So Tony's actually an old friend. We had a pretty like an over an hour long call like a couple years ago over some general game design stuff where we were just kind of talking about the Kickstarter space and just bouncing ideas off of each other. And we became friends. We got to meet in Philly at PAX Unplugged before COVID hit. I think 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that. Really nice dude. And he had commissioned me to work on some stuff for his brand because Plus One EXP does like beard balms and stuff like that, but with like an RPG sort of bent.
Cool.
So I did some freelance illustration for him, and we worked on some stuff. And I found out about Zine Quest, and I had backed his project Beards and Beyond, which did really well. And I've just been really thirsty for just really cool projects. And I just got done pumping out a bunch of artwork for this game, Black Mold, that I did in like, I think I did the entire art package for this board game in like 10 days. So I looked at the stuff for Zine Quest and I was like, I can't do all of the heavy lifting on the words and the verbiage and all of that stuff, but I can load this thing up with illustrations, no problem. And I have an idea. So I talked to Tony about it because he had done Zine Quest last year, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll work out the system side of things, like the mechanical side, and I'll do all the writing. What are you trying to make?" And I was like, I think we should do a TTRPG that's about being super gross. So just boogers and popping zits and farts and vomit and all kinds of stuff like that. And he was immediately into it, and yeah, here we are.
That's what makes it fun. So you can't see it, but right now I have a picture of Glutton that you sent me
Yeah,
on
yeah,
here.
the gluttons.
You did the artwork for that?
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's really awesome, dude. That's
Thanks,
really,
man.
really awesome. I love it because it's got that dirty, grimy, like punk rock, like just it looks like someone that I would see at a concert that
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
yeah.
That
I mean, yeah,
maybe hasn't slept at his maybe in their car for like the last 2.5 years, or has been couch surfing for the last 2.5 years, and just looks like repugnant is a good term of phrase for the
yeah.
game you got going on here.
Yeah, so that's just for anybody looking at the image. That's one of our original races and classes. That's a Hoggo glutton, and the gluttons are like these iron stomach, like food maniacs who can like eat stuff and then take on their characteristics. Like their mutation table is like really it fluctuates heavily based on what they eat, so they can like take on the characteristics of their food, but they can eat like anything. So the world that the RPG takes place on is called the crust, which is basically just picture like the earth, but all the oceans are trash water and all of the land masses are giant landfills,
Oh
just
man,
tunnels on tunnels of garbage. So you're going to scrounge around and do a lot of like foraging and stuff, but you're going to find like artifacts and rotten food from like the modern era. So like a pair of roller skates would be really cool because you get like a +1 to movement or something, but but it's still just regular roller skates, right? So it's kind of like the idea behind the world setting is to like kind of subvert norms of the RPG a little bit, where like instead of being like a dashing hero or a calculating villain, you're like this gross slob who's just eating boogers and like trying to dig through garbage.
I love that, dude. I love that. So before we kind of get in a little bit more into the game, why don't you kind of just give me a background about yourself? I follow you on Facebook, so I know a little bit about you from at least from what I see. I know that you're
Sure.
a games creator. Black Mold looks freaking awesome.
Thanks, man.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, as you mentioned before, my name is John DeCampos. I'm a 38-year-old freelance illustrator, game designer, and owner and co-founder of Terrible Games. We did a Kickstarter last year for Token Terrors, which you're seeing all of our stuff behind me. And we basically just, trampolined off of that campaign and have been developing a lot more IP. But yeah, my primary gig is I'm a freelance illustrator. I was before COVID. I was a musician. Also, I got two bands. I'm in a stoner metal band called Haze Mage, and a punk rock party group called Cowabunga Pizza Time. And yeah, so you were talking about, like, that gross, slobbed guy who looks like he's been couch surfing. Like, I know that dude.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, musician, and I'm a stay-at-home dad too, but like my kid's a little older, and so yeah, I started getting into this business because one of us needed to stay home with our infant daughter. She's 6 years old now, so I've kind of stepped into my own as a freelancer and sort of cemented my skill set in the world of tabletop a little bit more recently, because with COVID and all the development going into making tabletop games as a freelancer, I've actually picked up some work doing illustration for other game creators that aren't for my stuff, which has been awesome. And yeah, that's my deal.
That's awesome, man. And I can't say enough about your artwork. So I had to scale down the picture a little bit to fit it on the screen.
Uh-huh.
But the line work in here is amazing. Do you do it digitally, or do you draw it out on like a pen, like with pen and paper?
Yeah, so for the first 4.5 years of my freelance career, I did do everything analog. I did stuff on Bristol board with pencil and ink, and then I had this really like archaic system of digitizing my artwork so I could put it into coloring, where I would take a picture with my phone and then digitally clean up the piece in GIMP, which is an open source software that's free for anybody. It's basically Photoshop, but it's free. Then I'd separate all the line art and then do my layer work and start doing the coloring. And it was cool. The permanence and the decision making that goes into making a piece using analog materials is a different headspace. But a little over a year ago, my family was like, "What do you want for Christmas?" I was like, "I don't need anything," and they were like, "There's got to be something." I was like, "Well, if you guys really want to get me something that'll be useful, I'd like to get an iPad Pro so I can start to move into doing digital art." And that has been like a complete game changer. Like the workflow and the has just been streamlined to a crazy amount. So yeah, all the line work you're seeing there is digital. And actually, since I got the iPad, I have not made an analog piece of artwork since then.
That's cool, though. I mean, I'm a big comics guy, and this is definitely something that I could see on the cover of a comic, or even inside in one of like a full page panel. It's really, when I say it's beautiful, it's so ugly that it's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it, and
Yeah,
I don't want you to take any offense to that at all. I have a huge fascination for things that are different and creepy and gross and grimy, and it's beautiful, man. It really is.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what kind of response we get from the zine and RPG community on this particular IP. I think it's really fun. Obviously, it's very heavily influenced by my fandom of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and just comic books in general. I was just talking to the barber who's cutting my hair. I'd wanted to be a comic book artist since X-Men '92 came out. As soon as I saw Jim Lee's 5-page spread on the X-Men '92 cover, I was just completely just obsessed with the whole thing. And then I started collecting comics, and I tried to do comics for a little while. It's just a little bit too much work for not that much money, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of my influence, is stuff that I think that, like, broad strokes, comic book sort of look is kind of my deal, because it is very illustrative with pretty hard line work and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, now that you say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I do get like a Bebop and Rocksteady kind of feel from Glutton here.
Yeah.
So let's move on to your personal gaming experience. So like what got you into tabletop role playing? We kind of talked about what got you into creating games, but what are your go-to games?
I mean, in RPGs, I didn't get started playing RPGs until 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So I played a campaign, a homebrew that my buddy did for a year. I loved it. I thought I could do a little bit better, so then I ran a homebrew for about a year and a half. And then I took a break for a little while and got really into Magic. And I'm not nearly as into Magic as I used to be, partially because of how much work I've taken on as an indie publisher and designer. But I still play Magic on a pretty regular basis. I still buy, every time pre-releases come out, I usually pick up some stuff. And then, working with Tony and doing stuff with the EXP channel, I had done an episode with him for one of his streams where I had a ton of fun, and kind of circling back to doing stuff for Zine Quest. I was just thinking about that. And I was also doing a remote game with my buddies doing Dungeon of the Mad Mage for 5e recently. That was a blast. And RPGs have like sort of a weird place in my heart, because I have a ton of fun. But when you become a freelancer and you're independently creating a lot of the stuff, and you have to budget your time, like thinking about putting aside 5 hours of your day so you can pal around with your buds, either remotely or at a real table, preferably, gets a little bit trickier when you become a parent and you're working for yourself.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I just me and my wife just had our child 2 months ago. It was our first child, and
congrats.
Thank you. And taking on this was a lofty goal for me, and I basically just opened up the door and said, anyone who's willing to be interviewed, please direct message me. And I only thought I was going to get maybe 3 or 4 people. I figured I'd set it all up on a Saturday, and then now I'm about 10 to 12 people in, and I have to do different days. And but the only stipulation for me doing this is I had to set out time to be able to put my daughter down for bed tonight. That was so I know what you mean about cutting out space, and even playing with my friends. It's not as frequent as it used to be. So, and fatherhood, something different, man. Something different.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're gonna go through a lot of different transitions when you're thinking about how you spend your time and what you prioritize going forward. But it's kind of I think it's obviously it's a very rewarding journey, parenthood. I mean, we're kind of going off on a different tangent here.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. I'm all about it, man. The one thing that I have found recently is like sort of stepping into the role of an active parent for the first couple of years, especially when it's real chaotic, when you're dealing with like a younger kid, of ages like infant to 4 years old. It's just a lot of transition for me and my partner, it was, and for our daughter as well. But after a while, you sort of settle back into being like the person I can't speak for everybody. I'm not speaking for you, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I felt like a different guy after we had a kid, and now like I've sort of settled back into feeling a little bit more like myself in the last couple of years, which it has been interesting. But again, with doing RPGs and stuff, I think that there's also a counterbalance there, right? Like you go without for a while because you have other stuff you have to focus on. But then when you do make that commitment to get back in with your friends and sit down, I mean, I really try to role play the hell out of my games when I play. I really try to make smart choices in combat. Like I really try to maximize the experience when I do set aside that time.
Yeah. That's I do the same. So I can't remember if you said that you were part of Zine Quest. Were you part of Zine Quest last year?
No, actually, I had seen Tony's campaign for Beards and Beyond, and obviously in passing, he must have mentioned that it was a part of Zine Quest, because he had picked up and decided to do that project pretty quickly. Like out of nowhere, he was just like, "I'm doing this thing," and I just backed it like sight unseen. I didn't really read much about it because Tony's a friend, and it was like $15, and
Yeah.
I was just like, boom, like just backed it and then went about my business. So yeah, no, I didn't do anything with Zine Quest, but I think the idea is super cool. And I actually wasn't, as a Kickstarter creator with our board game offering that we did last summer, I had no idea that Kickstarter does these little like these initiatives, like with Zine Quest or with 100 Days, or what is it? It's 100 is the thing that they're doing recently.
Yep.
Yeah, I had no idea they did this stuff. I think it's really cool because it kind of gives you a little belly fire if you're part of that community.
Absolutely. And the way that when I'm talking to people, the way that the thing that I get is that it for your game or for whatever it is you're working on, it gives you a date. Like it needs to be done by then, so you can put it on there. So there's a hard stop.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to that, I can say that like as a musician, like talking to my bandmates, this happened actually before. Obviously, this is all before COVID, but me and my guys in Haze Mage were talking about doing another full length album after a 5-song EP that we did a couple. So it had been like 2 years before we did an EP, and I was like, "Yeah, let's put out a new record. I'm gonna go ahead and book the studio time." And they were like, "We don't even like we don't have all of the songs done. Like we're still." we're still working on stuff. We're still sort of ironing out some of the finer points of the songs and everything. I was like, yeah, but if we just continue to bounce along here, we're never going to do it. And I've actually been a very strong proponent of building a brick wall off in the distance and then getting in the rocket car and heading towards the wall. That's sort of been like the way that I kind of lean on that structure for producing stuff. And obviously as a freelancer, deadlines are kind of like a huge part of what you have to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Deadline to deadline to deadline. So I guess that brings me to my next question of why Zine Quest? Why put this specific game out for Zine Quest and not, something after Zine Quest? Because I believe that one of the stipulations of Zine Quest is it's only up for 2 weeks or so.
I mean, after running a 30-day campaign for Token Terrors, which was transformative and stressful as hell, and took years and years to actually step up our personal game and our logistical game to get to the point where we're ready to put our game up on Kickstarter. I look at this thing where I got Tony doing the lifting on the copy and writing, where I just need to contribute art and him and I can workshop and I can lean on him. I know that he's a great creator and that he's going to deliver on his side of things. And a 2-week campaign where this is a very containable project. If we're going to end up going with Mix'em, I think, on Tony's recommendation, but if we only sell 20 or 30 copies, I'll just run down to the copy shop down in Pigtown and go get it made. Like this is so small compared to doing a $30,000 campaign that for me, this is just like, oh yeah, this looks fun. Like I like RPGs. I like Tony. I like making cool shit. And the other thing is, on a little bit of a broader level, like for Terrible Games, my company, which we're going to launch the campaign on the profile page for my publishing company, only because Plus One EXP, great content creators. Tony and his team do great, and they're going to do great work with us. But we talked about, I was like, do you want to put it on your page? He was like, I think that the branding, like the whole tone of this is more your guys' branding. So we'll keep it over there. This is just such a fun, manageable project that for me, I was like, dude, this is a no-brainer. Like I want to keep up relevancy for my company and I want to put out more cool stuff with cool people. So why this is easy. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a smart idea as well. Let's kind of talk. So, mechanics of gameplay and ease of gameplay. Is this for more of an experienced player, or can a new player, maybe someone watches this, doesn't play games, looks at it and says, the artwork's cool, and they go in there, they back it, they get it. Can they read it and start brand new with their friends, or do you have to be an experienced player?
I think that people will be able to pick up and play on this, mostly because of our squalid chit system that we're doing. So Tony wanted to do something a little bit different for our combat and our deciders, our deciding metric for things that are variable or involve chance. And basically what we're going to do is a half sheet that's going to have like a character silhouette and a number of different fields that are like strong hit, medium hit, light hit. And there's going to be a bunch of either chipboard or I think the deluxe version, we're going to do like wooden, like laser cut wooden chits that are going to have symbols on each side. So you're going to either flop where you drop your chits on top of this decision table, or you can flip them onto the table, or you can fling them onto the table. And based on what kind of action you're trying to achieve, you're basically going to have this very light, easy access dexterity game for your deciders. On the character creation stuff, each of the classes and races have 3 stats. You're going to add them together. Very easy. And the story writing side of it is going to be pretty easy to set up. I think that we're calling the DM or the dungeon master, game master, the collector. And that's the person who's going to decide whether or not this is easy or hard for the players. Because
yeah, understood.
Yeah, like we're gonna give you the tools to be able to play around in a world, and for character creation, it'll be super easy. Combat and stuff will be super easy, not very brainy or crunchy. But if the DM decides to punish, then that's how it's gonna go.
So be it, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. I mean, I personally can't wait to see this. I will personally be backing this, and you said there's a deluxe. I'm a deluxe kind of guy. I like all the frills,
Cool.
so I'll back that for sure. There's also we talked a little bit before about the RPG Zine Facebook page. There's an initiative going around of 28 days, $28, or $28, 28 days. And the way that I describe that is for every day in February, you back a game that you're not backing already at the minimum $1, and that helps the creator get more backers, get more dollars, help fund their game, help get more presence on Kickstarter, things like that. Is that something that you plan on joining as well?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, the $1 back is so easy to do to show support within the community. There's a group for indie developer tabletop games on Kickstarter that is the same thing. I think it's called the Dollar Pledge Club.
Oh, cool.
Where, yeah, once you're a member, like people post their campaign when it's live, and everybody who's in the group, if they choose, will go in and drop in for $1.
Nice.
And yeah, right. It is. It's great. It's just gravy funds that pad your bottom line a little bit, and it does show those backer counts at $1 or $100 doesn't matter. It's still going to drive that backer count number up, which is going to help with traffic. And yeah, you're going to see updates. And you know what happens after you put that $1 and you start getting updates? You might end up backing for the whole thing, because as updates come out, you're going to see cool stuff getting talked about and things getting thrown around. Then you might be like, well, $1, what's another $15?
Yeah, and I've also seen some creators say like, that's cool. That's a really cool initiative because $1. If you back for $1, that gets you the PDF copy of the game. So I mean, you're getting a little something out of it too sometimes. I think it's great, and it pushes more creators, I think, to create more. Even if you see all those backers and there's people with interest, and like you said, the updates coming through. I get updates constantly, nonstop, from projects that I backed 4 or 5 months ago, and I'm just still waiting on the physical copies of the stuff, and it's awesome. I like that. It's to have that presence with the people who are willing to back your project is great. And Kickstarter says it all the time. Backing is not buying. But one of the things that I first look at is what are the backer tiers, and how much is it to back for a specific thing that I may want to get out of backing. So let's talk about your incentives, let's say, for the project.
Sure. So yeah, we're gonna do the $1 PDF, if I'm not mistaken. And then we'll have the regular saddle stitch booklet, which I think is going to be 40 pages plus. And hold on a second, I actually have it open right here. I'm just going to take a look.
Sweet.
Okay, so so Tony's looking for digital thank you Repugnant art kit at $1. I'm not sure what that is. Digitally disgusting PDF at $8. Really Repugnant at $15, which will be a digital thank you, an art kit, and Repugnant PDF, physical copy of Repugnant RPG. $25 for premium putrescence. Physical copy, digital thank you, art kit, Repugnant PDF. 6 limited edition squalid chits and a world map.
Very cool.
And that's it. And I think some of those may or may not rely on us scaling our backer count to certain numbers. I've recently been really kicking around the convention of a lot of first-time creators just going through the motions of having stretch goals as a given. Stretch goals are fine, but as somebody in the hobby and the creator in the hobby now that's a little bit more educated on the inner workings of what the economy is on producing these games. I mean, in the case of Zine Quest, it's a little different because you can DIY the entire thing from top to bottom. But I think stretch goals are fun, but they're really just kind of a gimmick, and they create this situation where there's a lack of transparency. It's weird. And for me as a creator, like I kind of want to think about ways to just frame it differently for the backer. So I'm kind of looking at ways to just be like, look, if enough people back at this level, that gives us enough workable funds to be able to add X, Y, and Z to the game. It's not really a stretch goal. It's literally get your friends to back if you're into this project. And if we make enough money and increase our margin to this amount, then we'll include this stuff for free for everybody. And I understand that's how stretch goals work, but they're not framed that way.
They're not.
Like
Yeah,
they
they're
put a
not framed
dollar
that
sign.
way.
Yeah, they put a dollar sign on it, and then what you see is you're like, oh well, obviously everybody wants to make more money. That's what this is about for them. It's about making more money. It's really not. It's like we can afford to put out a game at X amount price, but if we order X amount units, then our price for each unit goes down, and then we can take that extra 80 cents that we just took off of our per unit order and invest it back into the game. So yeah, I saw a larger campaign that the middle of last year that did this exact thing. They were just like, we don't fuck with stretch goals. Basically, if you get us to the amount of money where we can order this many units, we're going to add a whole nother thing of cards to the game because we can afford to do it at that point. I want to try and think about a way to get that language across.
Yeah, I can appreciate that as well because it almost the way you're right, the framing, the way that it's suggested now as far as stretch goals is like you can get it. Say it's a $5,000 to the stretch, right? You get the $4,999, and you don't have enough money to, be able to fund the game for your original budgeted amount that you thought, and then add a sticker on for the people. You know what I mean, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, it's tricky too because a lot of, and I'm guilty of this also. I mean, our stretch goal format for Token Terrors wasn't exactly streamlined, and some of it was a little rushed. We're still sort of picking up the pieces and getting that work finished now. But I see so many first-time creators are like, "Oh, we're going to do a stretch goal at $2,000 where we're going to add 3 promo cards," and it's like, dude, like the artwork costs you money, yeah, but components-wise, it's 3 pieces of paper. Like that's not. The amount of money you're raising for this as a stretch goal isn't proportionate to the actual reward you're adding to the game. Like, but that also goes along with like how you're going to educate your backers, because I don't think a backer looks at an extra card getting added to the game and they're like, oh yeah, well that creator paid an artist $1,500 to do the artwork for that card.
Yeah,
like I don't think they think about that.
That is true. That is true, and that's not something that I think about either because when I think about zines. I had this idea, and I didn't know anything about zines until I joined the Zine game, the RPG Zine Facebook group. And, I was asking, what in the hell is a zine? I kept seeing OSR, I kept seeing zine, I kept seeing, all this terminology that didn't make any fucking sense to me at all. And then it's guys like you, it's guys like Tony and like Philip Reed and those guys like that who actually like, I throw these jackass questions out there. And I feel like such an idiot asking them. They're like, oh, no, here it is. Here's an example of what it is. You can go to my site and look at these for what a zine is. Here's a PDF of, a rundown of what OSR is and the idea of OSR and things like that. That page is phenomenal, especially for someone like me who I'm not very well versed in TTRPGs. It may seem that way because I like to interview guys like you and, people who have successful games and things like that out there, but I'm learning as I'm talking to each and every one of you, and I get it all the time where I talk to people on certain forum sites or things like that, and they think that I'm stepping too far out too quickly, but and I also get I'm not a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I get it all the time too, where like if you don't like the
what?
foreground, if you don't like that, how can you like anything else? And that also throws me for a loop too. I'm not familiar with the 5e and all the different supplements that go in. A lot of zines that I see are 5e based, and so when I see games like Repugnant, there's another one from Andy Lennon, Pistol Packin' Bondage Nuns from Dimension Sex, where it's not.
Hell yes.
Yeah, it looks awesome. It looks awesome.
Yeah, dude, that sounds like that's a pulp movie. That's a pulp book cover in RPG form right there.
Exactly. So
it's a grindhouse flick.
And Morkborg Mothership, when I see things like that and it's not completely Dungeons and Dragons, it gives me a little hope and it makes me feel like I am in this space where I'm not going to feel like an outsider, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of things I'd want to touch on with what you just said. First of all, man, good on you. Trial by fire is one of the best ways to get yourself acclimated and keep yourself motivated. One thing that I am really happy with the outcome for Token Terrors is that I never played a skirmish game before. I don't know why we ended up making a skirmish game, but I think that the design sensibilities that we put into the game feel fresh and original to people who are familiar with the skirmish genre, because none of my team play skirmish games. Never once touched Warhammer. Didn't do any, like, none of that genre, none of the big hitters of that genre. We didn't mess with it. And I think, you know, the one distinction that I think is definitely worth looking into, as far as like looking at a lot of campaigns that come out that are 5e compatible, is that like each of the editions of Dungeons and Dragons, since you know, admittedly are not as well versed on that side of the RPG world, those are like full sweeping revisions on the core system of D&D. And when you look at stuff like from OSR, which is Old School Revival, that's speaking to the metal rock, like 70s era rock and roller, outcast, high school, stoner kid, satanic panic, you know, culturally, you know, on the edge. Everything about that aesthetic, everything about early Dungeons and Dragons and early RPGs that's associated with occult practices and satanic stuff and all of that, man, that's the thing I really, really love about TTRPGs. I mean, it's an aesthetic. It's a completely a self-contained aesthetic. And you look at stuff like Morkborg, or like, you know, to a much lesser extent, what we're trying to do with Repugnant, which does have like a DIY crust punk sort of, you know, bent. I think that's what people really enjoy about the zine community, because it is about pushing that DIY stuff, but it's calling back to all of those things that people like in the broad sense aesthetically about what the TTRPG scene represents.
Yeah, Yeah, I will have to look at it that way, because when I see the OSR stuff, I think of, you know, I think of, okay, well, here comes another dungeon crawl here, you know, but I think I'm just biased, to be honest, and I need to step out of that and do a little digging and maybe jump in on a game and see what I'm missing first of all.
Well, that, yeah, and
I got a bad taste in my mouth when I played as a teenager, of just not being able to play and being too focused on the rules and things like that, and it just didn't make it fun, you know.
yeah, that's one thing that I found with some OSR systems, and especially like I had played 4th edition for a while, and then I jumped into a one-off with some people who were playing Pathfinder, which is basically 3.5 Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and the granular minutia of combat in 3rd edition just made me want to fall asleep. It was so slow. But then you look at 4th edition, where combat was basically structured around like an MMORPG, where if you didn't have a tank, a caster, a healer, and a thief, like if you didn't build into certain archetypes and group structures, you were just going to eat shit. Like, and the whole system in combat was set up around like all of these video game like super moves, and a bunch of people hated it. And then you look at 5th edition now, where like they've basically streamlined stuff, like character creation's easier, combat's a lot easier, your bonuses are easier. And yeah, I think that, you know, looking at trying to mitigate that side of the game is always kind of a challenge, because you do want to have people be able to get both sides of the coin right with a tabletop RPG. You want them to be able to exist in the skin of a character that they're excited about, but also have these really big, gratifying wins in combat where they are like pivotal to the party not getting murdered.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to kind of walk that line a little bit. And I'm hoping that the end result for Repugnant, given my and Tony's collective expertise on him designing RPGs or being around the block on that side of things with Beard and Beyond once, and my brain on doing, you know, a skirmish game and combat mechanics and a combat system for Token Terrors and some of the other games I've been working on. Hopefully it'll all kind of gel.
I think it will. I this is one of those ones like Pistol Packing Bondage Nuns where I'm gonna probably buy 2 copies, to be honest, or back for 2
Thanks,
copies. Where it's gonna be one goes on the bookshelf, and then the other one is for the table for anybody to look at whenever we play. And
Sure.
I think it's gonna be awesome, man. I really do. When do you guys plan on launching?
Initially, we were planning to launch on February 1st, but we're seeing that the playing field's a little crowded for the first week.
Yeah.
I think that we're actually also, I'll be honest, I need a little bit more time to get to work on the artwork. I've done one of each class. And I've done a handful of monsters, but I have a pretty sizable list of things I need to get done before we can make the campaign live. So we're pushing back to the 15th.
Okay. Sure.
And yeah, I mean, the world building stuff that Tony and I have been working on, like I said, he's really been just hitting it hard, getting into all the copywriting and doing a lot of like the detail work and the world building. I've really been more of just like the big picture dude, being like, the game's called Repugnant. The Earth is a giant landfill. Everybody is gross. Here are the races I want to mess around with. And then yeah, we've been having like near weekly meetings, just bouncing ideas off of each other and trying to get this thing up to speed.
Very cool, man. Are you responsible for making that map that you were talking about as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna make the map. I don't know. I don't think that I'm gonna go with an isometric though. I think I'm gonna try and do something that's a lot more illustrative, and I want it to look like it's written on this like a scrap of like brown paper bag from the grocery store that's like ripped off the side. It's gonna have like a coffee ring stain and like, you know, stuff wiped on it. It'll look all gross.
That's awesome, man. That's exactly what I would expect it from something like that. Just something like someone just picked it up off the ground and is like, okay, well, let's map as we go along. I like that.
Yeah. Well, also, you know, because it's a world map, I guess we don't really need to lean isometric, because an isometric's really for when you're getting into like detailed tunnels and you actually have like a floor plan that you need to explore. Mm-hmm. This is just going to show you different regions that you can go to.
Very cool. Very cool. So before we go, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Any other games you have in the mix? Any other games you would like to promote? Website? Anything like that?
Sure, yeah. So Token Terror's Battlegrounds is our first offering from Terrible Games. We funded it back in July of 2019 or 2020. And it is a 1v1 semi-abstract skirmish game where you're a warlord who drafts an army of 10 mini monsters in a battle to the death. It's basically like super truncated, very like bird's eye view sort of description is it's like chess meets Magic the Gathering. I don't really think that's accurate, but literally like half the people who play our game describe it that way. And then so Terrible Games, like that was, like I said, that was sort of like our jumping off point for us to be able to form a legitimate LLC company. So we're going to do Repugnant in February, and then we're hoping we had told our backers that we were going to deliver Token Terrors in April. Sadly, just all kinds of factors. No first-time creator should say they're going to deliver it within a year. Just no one. And I don't, I don't know why I thought that 8 months was enough time. It's clearly not. So we're probably going to deliver sometime in the summer. If anybody's interested, anybody watching this interested in looking at Token Terrors or seeing what we're doing with that game, we're still taking late pledges probably until the spring. I'm thinking probably like March or April. And you can still back the game. What's really cool about Token Terrors is that it is a 1v1 standalone game, but our miniatures also work as token creatures for Magic the Gathering and minions in your favorite TTRPGs. They're also just cool little toys, and our little 6-pack boxes are going to come with a 15 to 20 minute solo mini game in each one that's like themed around the faction that you buy.
Nice.
Yeah, it's cool. I actually designed my first solo game this year. I did one for our 6-pack of our little red goblins is going to come with a game that's going to be like a little tuck box about this big, 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. That'll just be cards and chipboard, but it's called Goblin Nitro Run, where you're going to build a track down a giant chasm, and then you're going to run a cart full of dynamite or nitro down the track. And if you build the track the right way, you won't make the nitro get agitated and explode.
Nice.
Thanks. Yeah. And then, so we're going to do Repugnant. Then we're going to hopefully fulfill Token Terrors in the summer. And then in October, we're going to do this new game that me and my co-creator and partner, Phil Docolo, designed called Black Mold, which is the aesthetic is black metal. Basically, it's all black and white. It's monochromatic. And the game is the players are prisoners in a subterranean prison that has been basically, they don't know why, but they've been deserted. No guards or anybody has come to check on them in weeks. One of the other prisoners gets out of their shackles and opens the door, and this plume of black smoke comes in and murders the escapee. They breathe it in and immediately choke to death on it.
Wow.
And in the game, you're a group of prisoners who are recently released, and you have to traverse a subterranean prison full of fungal growths that are emitting poisonous black clouds. So your turn lasts as long as you're able to hold your breath.
That's neat.
And so yeah, we have all that ready. We're gonna roll that out in October, and yeah, keep your eyes out on that one. We've gotten like a sort of I don't want to say scary or alarming, but those are the words that come to mind. The response we've gotten from Black Mold so far has been a little overwhelming. Even in the small amount that we've leaked about it, and despite the fact that it's unplayable on TTS and no one has even really played the game, we've gotten like a very strong response to the effect of like, we already have some people interested in helping us co-publish and doing some other stuff with it. So we're trying to pedal to the metal on having that one play test and ready to launch in October.
Very cool. Yeah, that's one that I've been looking at as well. I watched a little bit of when you went live on Facebook of playing the game, and also when you unboxed it. That was really cool. The aesthetic of it, I love that dark, like you said it, black metal, the black metal feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just again say the $28, 28 days. It's a great initiative that is going on. I strongly suggest anybody who's backing anything for Zine Quest to do that. Also, I would just like to plug for anyone listening, if you would like to know anything about, if you'd like to know more about the Rollers of Relay, please visit our Linktree, Linktr.ee/rollersofrlyeh, where you can find links to the podcast, our social media pages, Ko-fi page, all that stuff. Or you can just message me on Facebook. John, thanks a lot, dude. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
No problem, man. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. And I look forward to what I think is going to definitely be a successful launch for you guys.
Thank you so much.
I will be backing. I'll talk to you. I'd like to talk to you and maybe Tony afterwards. And I'm sure that you and Tony are going to probably do a playthrough on Tony's streaming site.
Yep. Okay. That's the plan.
Cool. I look forward to that as well.
All right, John. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot.